70% of Earth is covered in water, but 97% of it is salt water. The remaining 3%, the fresh water we drink, grow food with, and survive on, is disappearing faster than at any point in human history. Scientists estimate that by 2040, more than half the countries on Earth will face severe water stress. And right now, 1 billion people already lack access to clean water within a 15-minute walk of their home. This is not a prediction. It is already happening. To understand the crisis, you need to understand where fresh water actually comes from. Most of it is locked in glaciers and ice caps, roughly 69%. Another 30% sits deep underground in aquifers. That leaves less than 1% in rivers, lakes, and on the surface. The water you drink has most likely been underground for thousands of years. Ancient water. Water that fell as rain long before human civilization. And we are burning through it at a rate that nature cannot replenish. Glaciers are the world's water towers. They store snowfall over centuries and slowly release it into rivers during dry seasons, keeping ecosystems and cities alive. But glaciers are melting at an unprecedented rate. The Himalayan glaciers feed 10 of Asia's greatest rivers, the Ganges, the Yangtze, the Mekong. Over 2 billion people depend on meltwater from these glaciers. Studies show they could lose up to 80% of their volume by 2100. When the glaciers are gone, the rivers will run dry in summer, and summer is when people need water most. But glaciers are just one part of the story. The greater crisis is happening underground, out of sight. Beneath us lie massive natural reservoirs called aquifers, layers of porous rock saturated with ancient water. For thousands of years, farmers could not reach them. But in the 20th century, modern drilling technology gave us access, and we started pumping. The Ogallala Aquifer in the American Great Plains irrigates 1/5 of all U.S. crop fields. It took millions of years to fill. At current extraction rates, it will run dry within the next few decades. When it does, the breadbasket of America faces collapse. India faces the same problem, but on a catastrophic scale. India is the world's largest user of groundwater. Hundreds of millions of farmers pump water from aquifers that have not been refilled since the last ice age. In Chennai, a city of 10 million people, the groundwater ran out entirely in 2019. Taps ran dry. Residents lined up for hours for water trucks. Hospitals struggled to function. Chennai was not a warning, it was a preview. Similar crises are now unfolding in Cape Town, São Paulo, and dozens of other major cities around the world. Before we go further, if you find yourself surprised by any of this, it means this story is not being told loudly enough. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. Every week we cover the geographic and historical forces quietly reshaping our world. The stories that change how you see the map. Now back to the water. The Colorado River is one of the most important waterways in the American West. It supplies water to 40 million people across 7 states: Arizona, California, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, and New Mexico. It irrigates 5 million acres of farmland. But the Colorado no longer reaches the sea. For the past 20 years, the river has been so heavily diverted that it runs dry before it reaches the Gulf of California. Lake Mead, the largest reservoir in the United States, sits at roughly 23% capacity. The West is living on borrowed time. Agriculture is the invisible giant in this story. Globally, agriculture consumes 70% of all fresh water withdrawn by humans. Most of it evaporates before crops can use it. The way we grow food is fundamentally incompatible with a water-scarce future. Cotton, one of the world's most widely grown crops, is also one of the thirstiest. It takes 10,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of cotton. A single t-shirt consumes roughly 2,000 liters to manufacture. The clothes you are wearing right now helped drain a river somewhere. The Middle East is the most water-stressed region on Earth. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the UAE have almost no naturally occurring fresh water at all. They have survived by doing something extraordinary, turning salt water into drinking water through a process called desalination. Saudi Arabia now operates the largest desalination plants in the world, producing billions of liters of fresh water per day from the Red Sea and Persian Gulf. But desalination comes at an enormous cost. It requires massive amounts of energy, releases concentrated brine back into the ocean, and is simply too expensive for most developing nations. There is another threat that rarely makes headlines: water contamination. Across the world, fresh water sources are being poisoned faster than they can be cleaned. In Flint, Michigan, an entire city's water supply was contaminated with lead for years, while officials denied the problem. In Bangladesh, naturally occurring arsenic has contaminated the groundwater of millions of wells. In agricultural regions across the United States, nitrate runoff from fertilizers has made drinking water unsafe in hundreds of rural communities. Clean water and available water are not the same thing. Climate change is accelerating every part of this crisis simultaneously. Warmer temperatures mean more evaporation from lakes and rivers. Changed rainfall patterns mean more floods in some places and more droughts in others. Extreme weather events destroy water infrastructure, and rising sea levels push saltwater into coastal freshwater aquifers, permanently contaminating them. The World Bank estimates that by 2050, water scarcity could force more than 216 million people to migrate within their own countries. Water refugees, not from war, from a disappearing resource. But here is what the doomsday headlines always leave out. Humans have solved water crises before, and some of the solutions are remarkable. Singapore imports most of its water from Malaysia, but Singapore decided that was too risky. So they built one of the world's most advanced water recycling systems, treating wastewater so thoroughly that it meets drinking water standards. They call it NEWater. Today, Singapore produces 40% of its own water through recycling, and they have essentially become water self-sufficient. The technology exists. The will to deploy it is what's missing. Israel is another model the world should be studying. Israel receives almost no rainfall. It sits in one of the driest regions on Earth. Yet it is a net exporter of agricultural products, fruits, vegetables, flowers, and it does not face a water crisis. How? Drip irrigation. Israel pioneered the technology in the 1960s, delivering water directly to plant roots through tiny pipes, cutting agricultural water use by up to 70%. They also recycle over 90% of their wastewater for agriculture, more than any other country on Earth. The solution was not more water, it was smarter water. The fresh water crisis is not a natural disaster waiting to happen. It is a series of choices about how we farm, how we build cities, how much we waste, and how much we invest in solutions that already exist. The Ogallala Aquifer does not have to run dry. The Colorado River does not have to stop flowing. Chennai does not have to run out of water again. Each of these outcomes is a policy choice, a political choice, an economic choice, and ultimately a moral choice about who gets water and who does not. The world is not running out of solutions. It is running out of time to use them. Fresh water is the most essential resource on Earth. More than oil, more than rare earth minerals, more than any commodity traded on any market. Civilizations that managed their water thrived for centuries. Civilizations that mismanaged it collapsed. The Roman aqueducts, the Persian qanats, the Aztec chinampas. Water engineering defined who rose and who fell. We are living in the moment where that same lesson is being tested again, on a global scale, for the first time in history. If this story changed how you see our world, share it, subscribe, and tell us in the comments. Which water crisis should we investigate next?